Alicia, how are you?
She's not hearing us.
We can't hear you.
Hi. I can't hear anything.
We can hear you.
Anyone hear me?
We hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you loud and clearly.
Okay, what do I need to do?
Can you hear us?
Do I need headphones?
You shouldn't. If you.
I can't hear. All right, wait.
Do you have headphones?
Can someone put it in the chat? There's no audio. I mean, you have my audio, but I don't have your audio. We can hear you. You may have to log off and try again. Okay, I'll do that. Be back.
There you go. So, does anyone have anything they want to say about the inauguration, on the highlights, or there any takeaways?
Okay. I thought it was cool, but I think it was just all bells and whistles. I want to see like what they do in those first 100 days. I think that's the most important thing. So I think it was cool. I think it was powerful, especially that young lady who recited that poem. I think that was the highlight of the whole event.
Yeah.
And then seeing Kamala Harris, you know, her hand on the Bible and being confirmed the swearing in as the vice president, I think that was powerful too. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's just, let's see what they do.
Yeah.
They went right to work, actually. Yeah. Some executive orders were on point, but I agree. Time will tell.
And then it falls back on Congress too, you know. It's so much a president, the executive orders can do so little, not a lot, but it can do some stuff, but it falls back on to Congress, and depending on what agenda gets through and don't get through. And so it's just.
All right, Alicia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, that's what it was. This is Alicia Crowe.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. I see some familiar faces.
Alicia's attorney and also the author of Real Dad Stand Up.
Howard is represented here.
HU.
HU in the house. Uh-oh. So, Alicia, what do you think about the inauguration?
We would love to hear your viewpoints.
First and foremost, I'm a proud Howard School of Law alum. I am still beaming. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
No, we just elected our first Black South Asian woman to the vice presidency of this United States of America.
Yes. Yeah.
Come on. You think I can just start out and go into, you know, the workshop without acknowledging the years and the legacy of our proud HBCU. And this was the hope of everything that our forefathers, our ancestors wanted, you know, and yesterday we got to witness that. And anyone that has a daughter, you know, or a niece or a granddaughter, our Madam Vice President Kamala Harris is our vice president.
Yeah.
And it shows every girl, every young girl, that look what you can do. Look what you can do. It can be done. So, you know, and I'm a proud HBCU family. I'm the daughter of the HBCU and Divine Nine. My father was an Aggie from A&T, and he was also a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And, you know, I go back a couple of generations. You know, his father was a graduate of Brick College, and my great-grandfather was enslaved on the Ward Plantation, and they sold him to Philopolis Crowe. So that's how I got my name. Yeah. But welcome. We're here. This is,
yes.
You know, this energy and this spirit, now more than ever, we got to get it together, y'all. And we got to work together in our community, because as everything that we've experienced over the past 4 years, systemically, everyone's talking about systemic. And tonight, our workshop is about how to navigate a system. So we really have to pull up and pull together and pull up, because we can't go into this year, this new era, not understanding and being prepared and being ready to get beyond having to navigate this system.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I thank you. I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be able to share this knowledge and experience. Real Dads Network is very special to me. Derek and I go back long time ago, and we're still here talking about this. So, and that's what we do, right? That's just what we do. Thank you. I appreciate the invitation to come and do this workshop. If it help anyone, then that's what we do it for.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're really honored to have you. And we're here as sponges just to take in. So you can actually just go forward and just, there's so much that we need to learn, and things are ever changing. And so that we're so glad to, learn and to receive knowledge and information. So.
Okay. Let's find out, when I do workshops, I always expect at the end that fathers become emissaries and they share the information with other fathers and other people who might be in need of the information. So, my workshops are in the spirit of receiving information, but I also get to learn as well. And what I'd like to do is, first and foremost, let me just say that my disclaimer, everything that I say here tonight is for educational purposes only. It doesn't constitute legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is formed. If I answer a question or I give information, it's just for educational purposes. I do not practice law in the courts. I'm an educator. And so with that said, I want to just get a sense of where we are. What are some of the issues that we're facing? I know that, with the pandemic, a lot has changed as far as the structure and the navigating the process of family court, because they've had to go more to an automated system than an actual physical, live on live situation. So I kind of want to get a sense of, if that's something you want help navigating, I can impart some wisdom on that end, because I know that the family court right now is using a lot of, they're trying to adapt to technology, let's say. And so on some level, certain aspects of the process have actually become easier that were in the past very frustrating. For example, now they send out notices through email, so all the parties are notified at the same time, and everyone knows that everyone received the information. And so it opens up the ability for you to submit information and exchange information with all the parties necessary in a proceeding. In the past, that was very problematic, because oftentimes one party would submit their information and the other party would be withholding information. And then when you get to court, you're sandbagged or not prepared because you didn't have a chance to review, and inspect what's being presented to the court. So I know on that level, the family court, because of email and the technology, it's made it a lot more efficient. The other thing that I think has happened, and we talk about this in the book, is in the past, if you couldn't appear in court, you could perhaps appear telephonically, but now, with Zoom, like what we're doing right now, the court is set up where you can appear online. You can also appear by phone, which, there are some people that are literally in their car appearing in court. They're taking a break from working. People were in I mean, I've heard stories, people were actually in the hospital with their cell phone appearing in court at the same time. So, you know, technology has allowed us to be two places at one time. And right now, because of the pandemic, I know a number of support magistrates are being rather lenient right now because they understand the constraints that we're under. So I just want to get a sense of, you know, some of the issues that you're facing. For example, enforcement of child support, if that's an issue that people are, you know, that's resonating with people right now, how to establish child support, what's included, how do you change child support? You know, if you're not working, you're receiving unemployment, what do you do right now? What would be the most proactive step for you to take? You know, I'm just throwing out some of these issues, and, you know, let me know in the chat if there's something in particular that you want me to address, or do you want me to generally give you the how to navigate the system in general, what you need to understand in order to really, you know, get your head in the game and understand what's at play?
Alicia, I would say probably maybe do an overview, a quick overview about the navigating the system, family court system, and then some of the dads, some of the questions you guys have, they can just chime in.
Okay, let's, how much time do we have?
You have about 8:15.
Okay, we're gonna try to go, you know, as quickly as we're gonna move. First things I'm just gonna go through. In order to just first deal with the system, you have to accept some basic facts and truths, okay? You know, it's not an understatement that the system's not father-friendly. We just heard in the inauguration about systemic racism, systemic oppression, all of the things that hold us back. And specifically, the Black family is one. This is an area where we really, you know, struggle when we go into a system that was not designed with us in mind. You know, just historically, the child support system and the enforcement system was based on the standard of what a white middle-class woman makes and her standard of living after, you know, marriage is ended. So when you plug that into our community that's disproportionately affected, we're not treated equal economically, we don't have access to opportunity. You're plugging in a formula that's really going to oppress us. So a lot of people don't know that that's the root and the history of child support. And I'm speaking specifically about the numerical standards that are used to calculate the percentages, which the support magistrates use in order to determine your portion of child support. So having said that, you know, we can speak all night about the disparities and the disparate impact that it has. And we know that that's gonna have to change. But in the meantime, we have to accept certain truth. It's not fair. It's not set up to be fair. There are many political factors that have led to the attitudes that exist in court. One, the feminist movement, which, you know, in the past, I've always been very critical about, because that was one of the things that helped to fragment the family, because they have us fighting each other over resources. The other thing is, I just want to say, so when you go into court, understanding and accepting that the system is not fair, and it's not exactly father-friendly either. You know, there have been some advances, but, you know, we have societal attitudes, especially with Black men. Let's look at, when you go into family court, child support, custody, you have to know, you have to make choices, and you have to know what you really want before you go into court. Even when you get served with papers and it wasn't your idea to go into court, you have to get really quick out of reaction mode, you know, because anyone that's served with papers, you know, we know the circumstances that lead to court. It's not something that you can just put, it's very emotional and it triggers a lot. So, but what you have to do is you have to get into the right mindset to deal with the court. And, in this book, I talk about something that my editor, who was a poet, Luis Reyes Rivera, the late Luis Reyes Rivera, he spoke about reacting, responding, and initiating. You have to be in a mindset that, okay, you can react, you can get upset, but then you got to figure out how you're going to respond. So if you're served with a summons and any type of paper from the court, you have to almost anticipate what's going to happen, what you're going to do about it, and what you want. In other words, for example, if the first time you're brought into court on child support, you get served with papers. Don't wait. Don't not respond. Don't not open the envelope. Don't not open the email. You have to deal with it head on, because the sooner you deal with it, the more options you have. It's like sports. It's like basketball. You don't wait for someone to throw you the ball and then you think about, okay, should I bounce the ball? Should I do a layup to the basket? Should I take a jump shot? Should I pass the ball? What should I hold on to the ball, let the clock run? What do I do? That's not the time to think about that. You already have to have your game ready with family court. And what I do in the book is I set up the entire scenario, okay? Because the book is based on my experiences. It's what I practiced. And it was my way of saying, I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. I come from a philosophy that says, let's figure out how to beat this thing. Because I don't want to be one of those lawyers that go in, smile and go, yes, Mr. Jones, yes. Knowing it's like the auto mechanic that kind of breaks your car a little, knowing you got to come back. And then he tries to sell you a muffler, and he knows you're going to need brakes. I don't want to be that way. I don't know if this ever happens to you. But, with women, it's a little different because it's like, okay, I think you're going to need a lot of work on your car, and it can be the same way, with this system. You don't want to, okay, he's going to have an issue with paternity. Okay, he's going to have an issue with child support. Okay, he's not going to be able to pay. Okay, he's going to have an issue with visitation. He's going to have an issue with custody. No, let's deal with holistically. Let's look at the whole picture and understand, what is it you really want? Do you want peace? Do you want to have access to your children? Do you want to try to work through this situation? Do you want to navigate this legal system and try to get them as far out of your, life as possible? That's where you should be. So when you have to deal with any situation, you have to know, because the thing about court is everything is treated separately, segregation, sequestration, separation, labels. Everything is labeled. Child support goes in this box. If you're going for child support, you can't discuss custody, because that's all the magistrate has the authority to hear. She can't hear the fact that you're not getting visitation and you want visitation. That's in a separate court. That's a separate action. Even though it's the same people involved, it's a separate action. So oftentimes fathers go into their first meeting in family court, they go into child support, and they want to talk about how they're not able to see their child. And the hearing examiner is kind of, indifferent, or like, we can't, they're brushing it off. That's because the support magistrate has absolutely no authority to hear custody. That has to go before a judge, a family court judge, which means you have to initiate that. So when I talk in the book about initiating, it means, okay, I've been served with child support papers. Now, what do I want? That means you have a right to counterclaim. You can now file for access, visitation, custody, we call it access. And now you're evening this thing, you're evening the field, because it's, I really want to be a part of my child's life. Now, having said that, let me caution you, and I know this doesn't apply to any fathers in this group, because, these are the real dads. We don't file custody to avoid paying child support. That is not a tactical maneuver to get out of paying money. So it isn't. And if you think for 1 minute that the support magistrate and even the family court judge isn't hip to that, you better think again, because it's going to work against you. So if you're looking to, you know, keep the connection with your children, you want to do it because you love your children, you want to be there. Don't ever want to do it as a, well, I'll just sue for custody and then I won't have to pay child support. That's not, those are two separate cases. And when you're going for custody, it's a really big deal. Custody involves a lot of things that child support doesn't. All child support deals with is numbers. The support magistrate has a calculator, they have a ruler, they have the child support guidelines, they plug in numbers, they figure out percentages, that's all they're able to do. But in a custody proceeding, it's the complete opposite. So you never want to just use custody as a way to get out, as a tool to get out of paying child support.
Is there a set amount that dads pay for child support in New York State?
What do you mean, a set amount? Well,
If they have one child, two
yes, yes. Under the child support guidelines, child support is based on guidelines. And the guidelines, the percentage of child support is broken down according to how much money you make and how many children you have, you know, in the child support order, in the child support case. I can go over like the table, for example, you know, if you have one child, it's 17%. You know, if you have two children, I believe it's 35%. Well, it's 25%. If you have three children, 29%. If it's four children, 31. And if it's 5 children, it's, you know, no less than 35%. What they do with that, let's say, for example, you make $4,000 and you have 2 children, they'll look at that, they'll plug in 25% because you have 2 children. They look at your income and then they'll say, okay, well, you have to pay $1,000. So they break it down according to how much you make. They plug in the percentage for how many children you have, and then that tells them how much. What is most important about the guidelines is you want to make sure you get a copy of the guidelines first and foremost. Because once you get a copy of the child support guidelines, and they have to give them to you, you can go online and get them. What you need to do is you can actually plug it in yourself and you have an idea. You can go to nyc.gov, you know, they have an online calculator. You can go right in, put in your information, and it'll tell you. It's always good to know ahead of time what the numbers look like, because that's will give you an idea of what the court is likely to order. That takes a lot of the fear out of going to court, because the thing that I found in my experience in court is a lot of fathers don't know how much they are going to pay, and they feel like they're walking in with a blank check that's going to be, you know, and you want to kind of allay some of that fear.
All right, I think someone had a question. Tyrone, you had a question?
Yeah. It was more like a statement. My experience with child support and dealing with 2 different states. When I left Alaska, I had children in Alaska and I was paying child support. But when it came to visitation and custody, I couldn't get to the state. My children are grown now. I even could the state to fight for the rights for them to come and visit more. So it turned into an only summertime visit schedule versus during holidays or birthdays.
Okay.
Or breaks. So it was just a horrible experience with it.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you went through that. It gets complicated with custody and child support when you're out of state. And I have, you know, in the book, I have a whole chapter on the process. The thing about child support, because it's money and it's enforcement and they can reach across state lines, it's very easy for them to deal with that. The other issue is courts have to have jurisdiction over custody. That's a separate issue. So if you were in Alaska, did you left and came to New York? Is that what happened?
Yes.
Okay, and when you got to New York, was difficult for you to see your children because they were still in Alaska?
Exactly. So there wasn't an agreement on the visitation. That's why my experience turned into a pay for visit. At least that's what it felt like.
Yep. When you left Alaska, you didn't resolve the visitation issue. You just had a child support order. Am I understanding
Yes.
you correct? Okay. Again,
Yes.
we're right there because child support is a totally separate entity. It's a money machine. It's a money collection machine. Custody is handled by a judge, and there are very different factors that a judge in a custody case considers that are not even an issue in child support court. So if you were to file for access equal parenting time, you could have done that in Alaska because that's the state where the children reside, and that's where the court would have jurisdiction. And you could have asked for visitation based on an entire schedule, a year, like alternate holidays, summer vacation, specific times a year. And summer vacation, probably more time because you can't go back and forth so easily because of Alaska, the travel and the expenses of travel. Now, in the book, I talk about you could have also negotiated the expenses of you traveling to Alaska and have the court consider the fact that you have to have plane tickets, to go to Alaska, or having the children flown from Alaska to New York. Those are things that I put in the book that show you how to set up a settlement, how you can work. I don't know if you were on good terms with the other parent, because in order to negotiate agreement, you have to have agreement. You have to be, in agreement or capable of sitting down and discussing it. Or at least what I have in the book is I have a sample agreement where you can work out a schedule, and all they have to do is edit it, and say, okay, instead of Christmas, how about the day after Christmas to New Year's, like the minor details of when, but you're in basic agreement that the visitation should take place. The other thing is this, excuse me, and I'm going to say this about custody. When you go out of state and you relocate and you have a new life, a new home situation, the courts don't know how you live. They don't know what's going on in New York. They're in Alaska. They have different rules. Every state has different laws. What they do in New York, they don't necessarily do in New York. What might be valid in Alaska may not be valid in New York. But what courts do is they look at what's in the best interest of the child, and they look at several factors. If the other parent is unsure or insecure about what your living condition is, what your living arrangements are, they may express those concerns to the court. And what they would do is then do the home study and the investigations, and then everybody, is knocking on your door doing reports. They want to know whether you have adequate food and, a place for the children to sleep, and
it's
who else
easy
living there. Those are all things that come up in a custody case that don't even, are not considered relevant in child support. So now you're dealing with another leg of the system. And the best way to deal with that is, and it's not too late to get into the game. Okay, it's not. But unfortunately, with the pandemic, everything is on Zoom. People are, if you're not able to travel, there's restrictions. You can't just, get in your car and go to Alaska. I mean, you can if you want to, but let's be, practical. So the digital space is where a lot of things are taking place that normally would take place in real time. But I hope I've answered some of that. Have I answered? Is there something else that, have I answered that for you?
Yes, you did. It was just the bureaucracy. I mean, this happened, my children are 29, actually 30 and 23 now. So, I mean, we worked through it, but it was the bureaucracy of getting the home study from the state of Alaska through New York, bureaucracy. So it was just a lesson learned. And that's what I guess I was pointing out, because other fathers might have interstate difficulties. So you answered my questions. Thank you.
Right. And I talk about that because you think it's frustrating. It's very frustrating because you said the word bureaucracy, and bureaucracies are like machines. They run a certain way, and you're not going to get the cooperation. In the book, I talk about interagency rivalry and how sometimes you got to take these matters to an elected official because people are not going to really connect with the New Yorkers from Alaska, and then this agency has to call this agency, and in the meanwhile, your file falls through the cracks. So there's a lot of slack there that you have to pick up in these types of situations. So I hope that was
Alicia,
helpful.
we have some other questions. Henry?
Hi. I'm in the middle of a 3-year child support case. It's been going on for over 3 years now. And I have 2 questions. One is, there was an arrears that was created by the magistrate, an error that they made and never cleared up. Is it possible for me to get my money back that I overpaid to child support? And my second question is it typical for them to include overtime that's not guaranteed in the calculations of child support?
Okay, I'm going to take that second question first. The answer is yes, because under child support, it's almost like the IRS, except it's actually more powerful than IRS. Any income that you make can be calculated for purposes of child support.
Okay.
It's called, they impute income to you. The other thing is the arrears. You're saying that they made a mistake with arrears. Can you be a little bit more specific as to how the mistake came about? Like, what was the process that led to the mistake?
Right. So I've been paying, I've been giving support to my son's mother since he was born. She filed, let's say, I think it was August. Mm-hmm. And in December, there was a temporary order for child support. Mm-hmm. The magistrate did not put down a date. So when Child Support in Albany received that temporary order, they took it back all the way to August. And there was no evidence. There was nothing that said that I was paying support in August, from August. Mm-hmm. But that was never in dispute whether I was paying. That everyone was in agreement that I was paying. And that was never included. So that wasn't included in the calculation. And the magistrate should have put a date for the temporary order to start. She did not. So they took it as being starting from the date of filing. And that created an arrears when there was no arrears in the beginning.
Got it. Got you. You explained it very well.
Thank you.
You probably could work for the child support office. No, because that's usually, when it comes up to money and how things get, messed up, nobody knows what's going on, and sometimes they don't either. I'm going to tell you this, and I talk about it in, I think it's chapter 7. When it comes to arrears are calculated always from the date the petition was filed. It's called, they don't go retroactive. They go forward, but they always calculate arrears, which is called back child support, from the date the petition was filed, not from the time you started paying or another date. They always look at that date. So the problem with that is, let's say she files a petition in January, and the court system is backlogged, and the court doesn't hear the case until March, and then they put it over for whatever reason in April, and then by May you go into court and you resolve it, and you started paying her from a certain date on, the court then makes a final order of child support, and it's payable from the date the petition was filed in January. Now, let me just clarify that. If it was a temporary order, let's say the court made a temporary order and said, okay, you're going to pay $25 a week. I know it's low, but let's just go with the number. That's a temporary order. Once a final order is made, when they figure out how much child support to set, it starts from the date the petition is filed. And why that's always problematic is because by that time, if they go back to the date the petition was filed, yeah, that's how they calculate arrears. You could be owing thousands of dollars. And that's what happens with arrears. That's why you have to be careful with temporary child support orders. That's why you have to be organized, because when you go to court, it takes a while for the case to get going, you know, to get your financials together for a final order of child support. It's always better to try to agree with the other party and reduce that to an order, so that you don't run the risk of now the court has to go back to January and you're already in June, and that's, you know, that's like 6 months of child support that you owe. And once, and I explain in more detail in the book, why that becomes problematic is because once you accrue a certain amount of arrears, it sets off all the child support enforcement bells, which are the mechanisms that automatically are triggered by the fact that you're now seen as behind in child support. So now, you know, it leads to, of course, they'll take it out of your check, but now it might affect your taxes, it might affect your driver's license, it might affect you trying to get a passport. So you want to be careful, you know, and make sure that, and understand that that's what they do. They calculate child support from the date the petition was filed.
But if you're already paying support from the date of filing, you're already paying, how can an arrears be created?
Right.
Especially the temporary order reduced the amount that I was paying. So actually, it seems
Paying
I
less.
should have been owed money.
Well, let me tell you something else. I'm glad you explained it. Mistakes do happen. And one of the things that can happen is, yeah, there could be a miscalculation. There could have been, when the court reduced the child support, for some reason, it could have fallen through the cracks. But why we say in our approach is why you have to be proactive is it's up to you to make sure everybody's on point. That means you can go back in and audit. You know, you can ask for an audit of your child support. You want to see these payments that went through. You have to have receipts. If you didn't pay her in cash, you have to have proof of payment. You have to do now what they do. You have to go down the balance sheet, look at what was paid, what you were credited for, and what the court ordered. And if the court order was enforceable through child support enforcement, they may not even know that this order was reduced. Again, you bring up a good point, and let me clarify. The child support magistrate is the court. That's the family court. But then you have the child support enforcement agency, which is a separate agency. The two of them are not the same agency.
I realize.
The same entity. And oftentimes they don't communicate, you know, in a way that's all on the same page. So you would have to audit your account and find out why the numbers don't add up. And you can challenge arrears. You know, I'm looking in my book. If anybody has a copy of Real Dad Stand Up, look up arrears in the section arrears. Okay, I hope is that helpful? I hope that was helpful.
No, that's very helpful. Where can I get an audit or that balance sheet? Where do I go for that?
You have to contact the child support enforcement unit.
Okay.
And this is what you have to do. You have to have your court orders, because the court order is what gives the authority to reduce your child support, because they may not know. You know, it could have fallen through the cracks. The court order is the enforcement. That's the law. That's the official piece of paper that has the force of law behind it. And that's what makes the order official. If they reduced it, that's one thing, but you have a duty, and I'm saying it's a responsibility, to get your account squared away, just like you would if it was a credit card bill and you saw charges on your account that you didn't use. Okay?
Got it. Thank you very much.
Alicia, we have Robert has a question.
Robert, hi Robert.
How you doing? How you doing? Thanks for coming on. It's not really too much of a question. It's more of it's a piggyback off something you said before about I guess doing your homework and not being scared to do your homework. For a prime example, like my cousin, he went to child support. I guess the fight for custody of his children or whatever. Even though him and his girlfriend, well, I guess baby mom at the time, they had like a verbal agreement and stuff like that. Took very good care of his kids and stuff like that. And he got served papers, and he walked in the courthouse and walked out with full custody of his kids. And everybody was like, well, how do you do that? He like, well, because I did my homework, and I wasn't just going to roll over, trying to fight for my kids. I knew that she did it out of spite, and I guess she thought that it was going to go one way, because sometimes people think like the court system is for for women sometime or whatever. But if you know how to talk and you know what to going for, whatever, it could be a little bit better of an outcome or whatever. So he wound up leaving, and she had to pay him child support, for her the one that actually served him first. So it's crazy how it goes like that. Like a bunch of my good friends, they had like full custody of their kids as well. Some of their significant others gave them full custody of their kids, and some of them they fought for. But again, you just gotta these are your children that you're fighting for, in the custody. If you feel like you can do a better job, it's nothing like parents fighting against each other, whatever. But it's saying like, if you financially can support your child better than the other person can, y'all can't come with a agreement or whatever. Just do your homework and, fight the best you can for it or whatever. Sometimes it always going to the favor of, the person that, best could provide for them. Sometimes it don't, but like you said, again, I just want to piggyback off what you just said, as far as like, just do your homework, understand when you go in there, be ready and stuff like that, because he couldn't afford a lawyer. So he had to become his own lawyer, whatever. So he did all the research, and then it came to a point where the judge, and when she was a female, and she actually stood up and like talked to his baby mom. She's like, it's women like you to make it bad for guys like him or whatever, to where, you come to court and I'm catching all type of lies and he's catching all type of lies, and how did that day gonna look or whatever. So it just looked bad on her, and then whatever going on and stuff like that. So it just went to his favor. And this was out in Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Robert. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's a lot of insight.
Right.
And I'll tell you, I'm aware of a number of dads that had to go in by themselves, and they came out victorious. I had one dad, he's deceased now, but he had to do that. And what happens is, what you were explaining is how when a father goes in with his heart, not his wallet, he goes in with his heart and he says, look, I'm showing up to court. I love my children and I want to be there. The law, and I'm sure, all states, the law isn't the same, but both parents have a right to know and associate with their children. And oftentimes fathers think, well, they don't have any real rights, that, it's a one side. No, you do have a right. It's how you represent. You have to advocate. You have to be your best advocate. I'm so happy you talked about how the father researched and did his homework. I have an audio version of this book where I'm actually telling you and taking you through. So you have to look like and act like a father when you go to court. There's a whole chapter on going to court. And let me just explain to you, I know it sounds, looks and fashion and dressing, not but it was a very big deal. And I remember when I wrote it, why it was important, because it was at a time when people would go into court and they were just looking like they were going to a club or looking like they're going to play some basketball. And that is the first impression or lasting impression. And they can't wait to look at you and size you up. And you have to come into court like a father. It doesn't mean you have to come in with a designer suit. You know, you don't have to, and oftentimes you just have to look respectable, like a dad. It's not about you. It's not about your style. It's about them. And sometimes a father's coming in off his job and he's wearing his uniform from work. You know, he might have just gotten off of work. He looks tired. He's a dad. It's obvious that he's there. He took the time to sit in the waiting room. I know fathers that have sat, you know, for example, in the Bronx court for hours, all day, for 7 hours a day. But they weren't gonna give up. But you have to, like, for example, when you go into court, you know, and now you don't have to go physically, you can't have the earrings, you can't have jewelry, because it shows that you put more attention toward your material things. Another thing is it works against you in child support. If the hearing examiner or magistrate, support magistrate, looks at you and he's, you know, and he or she sees you have a pen that they know the value of the pen, you're wearing a throwback jersey, you're wearing things that they can pretty much look you up and down, you got the latest phone, you know, and you think you're going to get across to this decision maker that you don't have the resources. Well, you know, you've already played your hand. You, as they say, you spilled your candy in the lobby. So you want to be able to, just like you said, Robert, you have to be prepared. Let me just caution you on something that I think is worth noting. I know none of the fathers in this group are about this, but I have to say it because there are some fathers that think that all you have to do is go to court and dump dirt on the other parent and show the court every bad thing they ever did. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because you know what happens when they don't win? They get so angry and they go, well, the system is against me. And then, you know, they call a lawyer and they rant and they're angry and then they want to write a book about how, you know, everything didn't go their way. That is not the strategy for winning custody for your children. You don't disrespect the mother to the court and think for 1 minute that they're going to look at you as, you know, the prize parent. Okay, it's not. If disrespect gets you the opposite result. No one wants to sit there and listen to all the mud that you can throw, and whoever throws the most mud, you know, and comes out, you know, is the winner. That's not the approach to take. It will backfire. What you said is so valuable and it's so important because you talked about how a dad, he educated himself. I also talk about lawyers. You have to know how to find a lawyer and work with the lawyer. Not all lawyers are equal. They're not all passionate about outcomes and families. They're, you know, they're all there. You don't get a real estate lawyer or a PBA lawyer to do your custody case. You know, you have to have a lawyer who knows the court, who's familiar with the decision makers, who may get respect when they go into court because they know that they prepare for their cases and they know their character. Now, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that because I talk in the book. You have to still do the work. You hire the attorney. You can't just say, take the wheel. You know how we do, you know, Jesus fix it, take the wheel. You can't do that with the lawyer. You can pray, but you can't just sit back and say, take the wheel. You have to participate in your own advocacy and you have to be the lead advocate, you know, and you have to understand that in your case, what you explained about, you know, the person that you just talked about is they knew what they wanted. And they knew how they were going to provide for their children, and they could explain to the court why they were the best parent, and they were fit to be the custodial parent. Let's say, because it's not a beauty contest, not a competition, but they were fit and they were able. Sometimes fathers can't say that because they don't have the vocabulary, they don't have the words. When the judge is looking for a reason to consider you as a custodial parent, you haven't figured out why you really want. You just know you love your children. And sometimes fathers are afraid to say that in court. They're afraid to say, you know what, I love my children and I want to be a part of their life. And instead they're just like, well, I have a right, I have a right to be there. I want to see them grow up. I want to know how they're doing in school. I want to be able to participate in their activities. I want to be able to make crucial decisions that help in their development. Those are things that, you know, I want to guide them. I want to be there. If I can't be in the house, I want to still be able to guide them, you know, and you have worth. That is worth something, you know, it's worth.
And
Alicia, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been so informative. And my one question I have is where you get your passion for this topic. But my first question is, I have a good friend and he was making 6 figures, big money, and he was paying child support. He got sick and he's better now. But in the last 3 years, he's not making that. And they're still charging him child support on what he used to make. And he's been to court, he's had lawyers, and he's still struggling with that. His daughter is now 21 and he's still paying child support. I'm completely ignorant about this.
Okay, I'm gonna go over something. I'm glad you brought that up because it's a lot of moving pieces. And, you know, it's the question is, what happens if I can't pay? You know, I've been paying child support, everything was good. What happens if I can't pay? If your situation changes due to something that you didn't cause, you know, like an injury, a lot of unforeseeable circumstances, it can't be something that you did voluntarily. Like you can't be busted smoking weed on the job and get fired and then go, well, I was fired, you know. When you're in a, it does happen. When you're in a case and you know you have an open child support case, you have to be proactive. And what that means is if your situation changes and you're not able to pay child support, you have to be the first one to the court and file for a downward modification. You cannot wait until you're hit with a violation because that's the move that they make. And once they make that move first, they got you because now you're looking at what is known as an enforcement proceeding. And an enforcement proceeding is not just the child support proceeding. It's not a custody proceeding. It's now a violation proceeding. And what violations have are legal consequences where if you're found in willful violation, you can be sentenced to jail, you know, as a result of that. So you're on that track. You're playing defense. So it's like a basketball game. You're playing defense now. The ball is not in your court. It's not, your team does not have the ball. You want to be able to keep the ball in play and keep it in offense, if this makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. So if you can't pay, you know, you get injured. I know that, you know, if you fall and you break your leg, you're not in the ambulance going, you know, I got to go find my modification, but it's almost like that. You have to, at the moment that you cannot pay, you have to take the move and be proactive and file for a downward modification. What that does is it puts it like, it does this, hold it. Now you're the petitioner. You're the one that's you're bringing the case. When you're the respondent on a violation, now you're like the defendant. You're on defense. You don't have as many options. Mm-hmm. And even if you try to file a modification, they filed before you, so now they have the floor. You want to be able to have the floor and, you know, control the legal consequences and the narrative. And, you know, you want to be able to ask the court to change your circumstances. And if it's medical, you want to be able to show your medical. You want to be able to show your medical records. You want to be able to have your day and your, you know, hearing or present to the court your reasons and the proof. I'm not able to make the money I was making. I'm making less money right now. This might be temporary, but, you know, I still can comply, but you have a right to do that. So I hope that was helpful.
No,
that's where a lot of people go wrong and they end up on that road to violation. And once you're on the violation road, again, it can trigger all the other enforcement mechanisms. And now you're you're feeling like a criminal because you can't get out of that. It's like you're caught in a net, you know?
So to what age does someone have to pay child support?
What age? I'm sorry?
To what age does someone have to pay child support?
Well, it depends. In New York, New York, it's 21. Some states it's 18. In addition to that, in New York, it's unless otherwise emancipated, which means if the child has gone to the military, they're considered emancipated. If they're married, they're considered emancipated. Some people get married very young. So circumstances that indicate that they're emancipated, then you don't have to. But every state is different. Some states it's 21, some states it's 18. Now,
Even if they're still going to school?
what do you mean still going to school?
Like if they're going to college? If the
Yeah,
okay.
because that's a tricky subject. In child support, it depends. Parents can be held financially accountable for college. What the hearing examiner does is they look at you. If you went to college and the other parent went to college, well, why would you deny the child college? And I spent a lot of time explaining that and how it's calculated.
Okay.
Because we didn't go over this because there's a lot of information. And I usually break our workshops down into specific, because I've done them where they're 3 and 4 hours long. Establishing child support is just the beginning. There's add-ons and, education, activities, other things are added on which increase child support. So, that's, private school, those are all issues that always come up. And, we can go over that, but for those of you who, if that might be an issue for you, I do talk about that, in the book. And why I will make reference to the book is because I lay everything out in detail, either audio or written, in a way that you don't have to have gone to law school to understand. Sometimes legal books, lawyers write or journalists write, but it's so academic that, I explain it in a way that everybody can understand.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? Why did you pick this area of study? Because it's just amazing, your passion and your knowledge. What motivated you to do this?
I didn't pick it. I
Okay.
didn't choose it.
Okay.
I didn't. It chose me.
Okay.
And I'll just, I was fortunate. I had a good father. I had a real good dad. My dad was, he was military guy, he was orphaned at 9. So fatherhood was real important to him. I'm his daughter. He wanted, to be both parents that he didn't have. So that was a bigger deal. Some fathers, say they didn't have a father, but he didn't have either. And we used to talk a lot. He taught me one of the things I grew up in a house with a sister, and then I had other cousins who lived with us, all girls. And my dad was also, he was a man's man. When he walked in a room, it was like testosterone was in the building. He wasn't, but he used to nurture us. He used to feed us and change our diapers and take care of us. He was 6'5". He was an ex-college basketball player. And when we were younger, I remember he brought home the rule book for basketball, and he made us all read it. He made us know the rules. I couldn't even spell basketball, but I had to know the rules. And I think he was reffing at that time because he used to run recreational programs in Harlem, like for Crowe. He had 2 full-time jobs. And so he was always into basketball and sports. So he used to bring us to the court. So I grew up having to know the rules of basketball, having to be able to watch the game and know what was going on. And, and I love the sports, but, when you have one of those kind of dads, it's like, okay, is that a foul? Always testing you, and you got to say the right thing. So I realized that at some point, he introduced me to a mentor who was an old civil rights legend attorney, Conrad Lynn, who took some of those old cases in the South against racism. And he was an incredible man. And my father introduced me to him because he said, you know what, you cut from a different cloth. You ain't gonna work for no big white shoe law firm. I gotta do something with you because you about your people, and he was a race man. He was like, gotta support your people. You can't be part of the problem, you gotta be part of the solution. So I had that. And then I realized that I was working with my mentor, and more guys were coming in with this problem. And he's, you know, he was like a grandfather figure to most of the men. And I would be sitting there taking notes and trying to understand, why is this happening? And all of the things that they would experience going into court. And that was kind of my entree into it, you know. And plus I had a dad that was like, he was a World War II veteran, a staff sergeant. And he was like, so do what you gotta do. You don't let that happen. If you gotta, you know, he talked like that. He was like, if you gotta pay child support, and you gotta be dragged through the system, you're not a man, not a man. You know, he's like, you gotta get it together. And so I listened, I talked to him about it. I started practicing and as a court-appointed attorney where you didn't get a lot of money, and I would, you know, rant to him and tell him, you know, this is what they're doing in the system. And I watched, not just sitting with my mentor, I watched how quickly a judge, you know, these women would be on the bench and it'd be so uptight and it'd be like, I don't care if you ever see your child, just like that. And guys would get frustrated and say, I give up all rights, and they would walk out, they'd slam out of the court, and I'd just be like, oh my goodness. Within minutes, it's over, you know? And I was just like, I cannot participate in watching our families get fragmented because somebody at the bench is in a bad mood today. Or maybe she didn't get her child support. Or maybe she believes that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. You know, like that, you know what I'm saying? That was some heavy stuff. And so I think that I get that, honestly. I get it from my father.
Beautiful.
And that's it, you know. And I lost my dad, and I just kind of, in the spirit of community, in the spirit of being on the side of solutions, that's where I get it from.
Well, you're doing an amazing job. You're doing an awesome job, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you. And
well, thank
great
you.
Work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Now,
we feel it.
I wrote this when Derek made his first documentary. I think I wrote my book, and that, I mean, it was so long ago. Derek had hair. I didn't think that, you know, in 2021, 2020, I'm like, do we still need this information? And Derek's like,
Yes.
you know what? We need the information.
Yes.
And I only will do workshops for the community. I won't do workshops across town. That's why when we did the Drew Hamilton, I was like, you know, I'll do that. Derek knows I'll do that. But the information never gets to the people who need it. But I'm also, you know, we're going to be doing more workshops, but I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, you know. Instagram is probably better because then I usually tag Real Dads Club. I'm Alicia Crowe on Instagram, but you know, this is important. I hope with everything that we did today that you become emissaries and you pull other people in.
Well, Alicia, this is just the beginning. So we just really appreciate everything that you're bringing. You know, listen, you're Real Dad's family. You know, you've always been Dad's family. So, you know, so we really appreciate, and this information, this book is phenomenal, and it's very relevant. You know, so, and the dads, if you don't have it, you need to get the book. You need to get the book or get the order. You need to get it. I keep it by me all the time. So it's very important. People think I know like a little things about what's going on with, you know, family court. No, I know because I read the book.
That's awesome.
So,
that's awesome.
Alicia, you've been awesome. Any other questions for Alicia? That's it for the questions?
I just want to say thank you for your time and sharing this info with us. That's it.
I also want to say, Alicia, thank you for coming. I was at Drew Hamilton when you was there. It was great having you again tonight. But where does that fish and bicycle thing come from?
What?
The fish and bicycle. My first time hearing that one.
You know what? What's her name? Gloria Steinem, who was a feminist, used to say that. And, you know, when we started doing this work, I felt I'm not a feminist. I don't, you know, in terms of that whole philosophy, the child support system was built on white women and the standards were set. And a lot of people don't know that. You know, I took time to educate myself on the system when I saw what was going on and putting it into a context. So, you know, when you use, that was the quote of the day. That was the quote of the day.
Thank you. I have the book too. Thank you. Yes.
Any other questions for Alicia?
So Alicia, how you doing?
Hi.
So I do have a question, but good evening. So I do have a question. However, I feel like my question is rather layered. It's not like just a straightforward question. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out a way to put it together that it can be condensed and make sense. I mean, I know I spoke with you before, Derek, and even Mike. Maybe y'all might be able to help me try and figure out how to make it simple. I mean, it's more about custody for me, not child support.
Okay.
You know, I'm in a
That's
current,
one there.
I'm in a current, right. I'm in a current case right now. It's been going on now for almost 2 years, about a year and a half. COVID definitely extended that. And I guess the simpler question is, the judge is now trying to force it to be resolved virtually, where I feel like I have one of them judges, like you said, like they got a bad morning and they treat you just like garbage. And I feel with my case, it needs to be seen in front of a judge, and we need to be present. There's actual video footage of, you know, what brought us all to this place. I feel that it's necessary to feel the emotion in person and not virtually. And the judges, like, they keep trying to force it to be virtual. And I keep saying no. So the case keeps getting pushed and pushed in a new date. And since COVID isn't lightening up, they keep making it virtual. However, even though we're in a state of COVID, on the other side, you know, this case, there was a criminal part to it. They had no problems with wanting to resolve that. But when it came to the family side, they don't want to continue with that in person.
Okay,
in this season,
let me interrupt you there. Did the criminal side involve domestic violence?
It did.
Okay. Domestic violence is a factor in a custody case. I lay out the factors that all courts consider in awarding custody to children.
Right.
The overall standard in New York, and I'm speaking generally because I don't know your case. I don't know anything about your case. So this is for informational purposes only, and this could apply to everybody across the board. For purposes of custody, the court determines custody in what is known as the best interest of the child, not the parents, not you, not the other parent, but the child. And oftentimes, when there is a contested case, depending on the ages of, is it one child or is it more than one child? Is it one? Okay. And what's your child's? Well, you don't have to say that because you're being recorded, and you know, these matters are sensitive and private. But what courts do is they look at if there are allegations of domestic violence, they do resolve those first, because that becomes a factor in awarding the custody case. Because any allegations of, you know, domestic violence, they look at the impact on the child. And so that is an issue. You know, we don't have to get into what the details were about that. The other thing is, you know, and the big picture is everything right now is done in the age of COVID, everything. People have lost people, they've lost partners, parents, children, entire families. You know, I don't know about you, but I know the mother, father, and the children. And they weren't even able to bury them because during the pandemic, they could not handle the bodies, they couldn't have funerals. So a lot of people had to be cremated. They had to do funerals on Zoom. You know, everything is electronic. It's not that, you know, and I'm not defending the court because they don't pay me. I don't work for them. But for the safety of everybody concerned, they're mandating digital. Some of the people in the court are working from home. Some of the people are coming in, and what they have is rooms set up with cameras and video, so you can come in and you'll be in a glass room if you don't have a computer, because they realize that a lot of children are learning at home online, and they don't have a whole lot of computers at home. So their children are online, and they have to, you know, so they afford you the opportunity to come into the court physically, and you're in a room that's basically a computer room where you go online with a judge who's in another room. So even if you were to appear in court and the other party was appearing in court, you may not even be in the same room. You may be just like we are right now. This is as good as it gets. You know, there's no guarantee that you're going to be standing there where I understand the need for to be in with people, but this is the way it is right now. And that's something that we all don't have control over for a lot of reasons, like I just, laid out. But mostly it's the safety of everybody concerned. So, I hope that, I just want to ask you a question though. Do you have access to your children? Are you able to contact them at all?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because,
Yeah.
that's another issue too, with respect to custody.
Yeah.
When one parent is not being allowed or afforded access, that does work against the other parent who may be denying access. So it's a lot of factors, that a court considers. And I laid them out, So I hope that was helpful.
Alicia, something that I learned from you educating us this evening that has been very helpful is that the spirit of the father should go into the court with, I love my child and I'm willing to do anything because I love my child. So they really pick up on that. That's what I'm hearing, when they see that we're willing to even compromise a bit because we love our child so much.
Right.
So I might be even willing to go virtually. This is not what I want to do, but because I love my child and I want to work with the system, even though it's not built for me, but I'm willing to work with the system because I love my child. And they pick up a lot on that. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Absolutely. You said it. You said it, Mike. It's called play ball. The other thing is, they call it being able to put your needs aside for the good of your children. And that's what they look at the heart of the parent, the other parent, both parents. They look at the heart, and being able to make that sacrifice for what might be convenient for you or comfortable for you, but it's putting them first, and I know, that's the standard. I mean,
sometimes it's easier said than done.
It's the balance of head and heart. Yeah. Because you might be so headstrong, you might feel like this is how, this is what I think should happen. This is what I want to happen, but there's a balance there, and that's a challenge, and that's why in the book I talk about the mindset you have to have, because it's like a sport, and again, as it was my analogy about basketball, you have to know the rules of the game, and you have to know who's who on the court and what they can and can't do. When you get on a basketball court, you can't just kick the ball. That's soccer. You have to know who the referees are, just like in a court. They're there to call the game according to the rules. They're officiating. If they're not there to tell you to go baseline, they're not there to tell you to take the jump shot down low. They're not there to say, watch the pit. They're there to say foul, 3-second violation, moving violation, double dribble. That's what they're there for. They're not going to help you and go, hey, the guy wide open shot, the guy who's slow, or, they're not there for that. They're there to call the game. And if you don't know who the players are and who's who in the court and what they can and cannot do, you're going to get hemmed up every time. It's like being on a basketball court and thinking, you know, you're going to run the ball and you're on the wrong side of the court. You're making the basket for the other team. So it's very much like that.
Wow, this has been
Well, you know,
great.
you know, I agree, right? But what is it that one does when you're dealing with a judge that doesn't even make eye contact with you when you walk in person? So this person already, you know, I walk in, you say hello, good morning. She addresses everyone in the room, and consistently she will ignore me off of for no reason. It's just her, she's having a bad day that day, right? So I get, right, like just doing what's best interest of the child, but
just because a judge is having a bad day doesn't mean a judge is not going to go your way. Okay, that don't read into they're not showing me attention, you know, with I'm losing this case. That's not necessarily. Judges listen to a lot of cases in a day. I don't know in every court, but in most courts, the judges are over scheduled. They could hear 60, 80 cases in a day. Sometimes they only have 5 minutes to hear a case, and they know they're going to put it over for next because they can only take but so many cases. With virtual, I think they are able to take breaks in between because people are working from home. They're trying to get people to resolve disputes because they know that that's always in the best interest of the child because we're in a pandemic. But having said that, just because a judge doesn't look at you, I know it sounds like they're dissociated. What's important is what goes in on the record, what gets established as facts and proof, what gets put in the file. That's what the judge uses to make a decision, and those are the things upon which an appeal can be made. I wouldn't worry about the judge smiling and saying, "Good morning, Miss Crowe. How are you having a good weekend? Did you have a good weekend? You know, how do you like the Yankees?" I could care less about pleasantries. If I'm there to make a case and advocate for my children, if I have a hearing, it depends on what you're in court to do. If it's a trial, if it's just a court appearance, like a scheduling, you know, an update, what's going on, are we going to get a next court date? We're going to order reports. Is this looking like it's going to settle? Is it going to trial? You got to know where you are on the grid. It's like when you go into a building and you get to the elevator or a mall or, you know, somewhere, and you look on the thing that says you are here. You got to know where you are and where your case is at all times. Just like in a game, in a basketball game, you have to keep your head in the game. You don't wonder if it's third quarter, you know, and it's first quarter or halftime. You got to know how much time you have on the clock. You have to know where you are. And it's that way in a case. So if you're in front of a judge and you are right now in the preliminary process of a custody case, you got to know what that looks like. You're not going to get custody overnight. It's not going to be I get to say my piece and put on my show, and now everything's going to go in my favor. That's not how it works. It is bureaucratic. There are rules. It's a process, and you have to know where you are in the process, what to expect during that process. Example, you have to know is this a first court appearance on custody? If it's a first court appearance, well, that's where they make introduction. You know, they figure out you're Joseph, she's married, this is so-and-so, this is the attorney, this is what you're in court for, you want custody, what do you want? Oh, you want visitation, okay. Or you want custody and you want custody, or you want custody with supervised visitation. You don't, you know, whatever it is that you've come to court on, you have to know that that's where you are in the process. You're not at trial. It's not going to happen that day. You're going to be able to, the court is going to determine what the next court date, available court date is. Do the parties have lawyers? You're not going to get to the heart and soul of why you want custody. So a lot of fathers make the mistake of on the very first court, they go in, they're, and they're like, I want results. You're only at step one of the process. So it's like when you look at that grid and it says you are here. You're at the beginning. You're not where you're establishing facts. And this is, why I'm the fit parent. I have a house with bedrooms and a good school district, and I can provide this, and I'm involved with the school. You're not at that point. So if you're in a certain stage of the case, you have to have your mind focused and be prepared for what that stage is at that time. And know that once I get through this is the next stage. You don't want to put the cart before the horse, but also, I don't care if the judge doesn't smile at me or look at me. As long as the proceeding is being recorded, my advocacy, my proof, my facts, my documents are in order. That's what I care about, because I'm advocating. I'm not there for play. I didn't come here where we all can sit together. That's like mediation. And if you're not in mediation, then that's a different thing. But in a court, it doesn't work that way. It's the judge has several cases. They may have 5 minutes. They have to make a decision and move on to the next case. They don't stay too long on one case because it's a process, and you're at a certain stage of that process. You're either at the beginning, you're at the middle, or you're at the end. And you have to know where you are and be prepared for that part of the process. And don't get distracted and caught up in, they didn't look at me and I spoke to them, and having said that, sometimes you walk into court, and I've seen this happen, never had this case, where father walks in and the first thing the judge says is, I don't think you should have custody, because he had the child since birth. The mother, she left the child with him and moved on. And the judge was so distraught over the fact that this father was raising this child, the only parent the child knew, as a baby. And he had no problem with the mother having access, but the child had to be reintroduced to the mom. And the judge was like, I don't think father should have custody. And because of that, that case ended up going to the press. It ended up, there was a lot of outrage from the community, because it was like, we didn't even get to, the judge was letting you know she doesn't believe father should have custody. Now, I understand if that were the facts that you were presenting, but just looking down and not having that personal touch, I understand what you're saying, but that's not their role. The ref in a basketball game is just going to call the game as they see it. So I hope that was helpful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So our mindset is very important, I'm hearing. The mindset that we go into the court with. Yeah. Well, I think we're out of time, but this has been so informative. This has been a tremendous help and a blessing, Alicia. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will pass this on to other brothers. We will share this information, we promise. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
See you guys. All right.
Night. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
You too.
All right. Night.